I remember the click of the hospital clock and the way it knocked on the hour as if it were asking a tired house to let it in. The nurse said I could go home, and I nodded like a woman who still had a home to go to. I reached for my phone, thinking of hydrangeas Thomas had planted and a porch light that used to mean safety. Before we go deeper, do me a kindness, like the video, subscribe, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. It helps us keep bringing careful, exemplary stories that might protect someone you love. Thank you for being here. I called my son 5 times. The first went to voicemail, the second too. The third connected and died. The fourth rang. The fifth answered, and he spoke to me like a supervisor firing a temp. Belle laughed in the background.
We're not your taxi, old woman.
Then the line ended, and something inside me did too. I took a cab to a rental office and signed with a hand that wasn't finished shaking. The Corolla smelled like pine and old cigarettes, and the seat was set for someone shorter or younger. I drove with my incision tugging beneath my ribs, past the river that had watched us for 40 years, and I turned into a driveway that used to recognize me. The key wouldn't turn. The porch light blinked out like an eye deciding not to see. Belle's voice floated from a window, bright and brittle. Retirement homes have pudding, Delilah. A shadow that was my son came down the stairs, paused at the door, then walked away. I slept at the motel. I didn't cry. Grief has a way of making silence heavy as furniture. In that stillness, I remembered who I used to be before I was everybody's afterthought. A tailor whose hands could hear fabric, a wife to a teacher who read sonnets and planted blue flowers, a mother who sold an engagement ring to pay a tuition bill and didn't keep the receipt for her sacrifice. I also remembered Thomas's last real instruction, his voice low and practical: keep the land in your name. If people change, you'll need shelter that doesn't. They changed the locks, I changed my plan. Months earlier, I tucked a thumb-sized camera high on a hallway shelf outside my room. I didn't know why I needed proof then. I only knew that sometimes a woman must be her own witness. The Halloween footage shook the courtroom later, but it froze me first. Belle, in my cardigan, a plastic oxygen tube looped like a prop, asking where her pills were in a quaver she'd practiced. Grayson filmed, laughing. Delilah the mummy still won't die. They made me a costume, then called it care. I burned the clip to a disc, labeled it neat, and placed it in Aloyse's gloved hand beneath the church maple. If anything happens, this is why. She didn't gasp. She squared her shoulders the way women do when they remember the last time they looked away and decide they're done doing that. The first snow arrived quiet and honest, the way truth prefers to travel in older houses. I took my key to the bank and opened box 117. Inside was Thomas's steady handwriting and a notarized amendment I'd never needed until now. If Delilah is neglected, abused, or abandoned by heirs, she may reallocate everything at her discretion. The house, the rental, the 7 acres near Belfast, the savings we tended carefully like a late garden. The lawyer I called was Ava Mendoza, who once wore a graduation dress I'd sewn when her mother couldn't afford one. She read the documents with her jaw set and her eyes level. "This is enforceable," she said, "and we're going to do more than enforce it." She filed for a protective order, prepared the trust paperwork, organized the evidence, and asked me one quiet question. "What do you want this money to do when it's done protecting you?" Protect women who don't roar. Build walls that listen. Make paper that outlives lies. We were ready for court when the twist began to gather itself. Ava's clerk, a patient girl with librarian hands, found a quitclaim deed at the registry, filed 2 weeks before the Halloween party. The transfer moved my house into a shell LLC with a cheerful name, Sunrise Elm Properties. The signature claiming to be mine was a tremor that looked nothing like my handwriting, witnessed by a notary whose office didn't exist, stamped with a seal that came from a stationery shop I'd used in Boston 30 years ago. At the bottom, beneath the false seal, was a phone number scrawled in ballpoint. We called it. It rang in Belle's car. "Forgery is not a misunderstanding," Ava said. "It's a plan." The registry clerk gave us the escrow officer's name. He remembered a young couple closing a simple intrafamily transfer, insisting the elderly mother couldn't handle paperwork. The officer had one more detail, a second call that day, this one shorter and colder, asking whether a power of attorney could be recreated from a scan because the old woman lost her copy. The number was different. That number belonged to my son. Ava asked me to listen carefully. "If you can stand it," she said, "I want a recorded conversation. Invite them to talk to you. Let them show us who they are on a clean line. It takes an older woman to sit with fire in her lap and not flinch. I called, voice polite as a customer service script. Grayson, I'd like to talk. Belle too, I'll make tea. There was a pause, the kind where a person chooses how honest to be. Fine, he said. Tomorrow. Ava's investigator set 2 legal recorders under the table runner I'd hand-stitched from Thomas's old shirts. When they arrived, Belle wore her pity like a new coat. We're worried about you, she began. You forget things. The house is complicated. The house is mine, I said gently. Tell me about the quitclaim. Her eyes flickered, quick as a match sputtering in wind. You signed it, don't you remember? Your hands shake sometimes. The notary came here, a friend. Which friend? The one with the stamp, she said, and then, like a child who believes naming a magic object can make it real, she added a first name that belonged to nobody in our county. Grayson stared at the table, then bristled. Mom, why are you doing this? We're trying to help. You can't manage things anymore. It's safer. Safer for whom? I asked. For a long moment, the only sound was the old house breathing through the vents. Then Belle made the mistake brave cruelty makes. She got specific. The title's already moved. We were going to rent your room to a student. You're not comfortable with stairs. You'd be better in a facility. Ava's hand on my sleeve was a steady anchor I didn't know I still deserved. The recorder hummed. Belle kept going, detail by detail, as if she were giving a recipe. The notary was out of state, but the seal looks fine. We scanned your signature from the bank's POA and pasted it where you needed it, Ava finished evenly. Thank you, that's clear. Belle's mouth opened. Closed. Grayson turned the color men turn when they realize their mothers have lived long enough to take a punch and hand it back wrapped in law. Courtrooms are not made for spectacle. They are built for weight. When the judge watched the Halloween clip, the air fell silent the way it does before a storm tells you it's not asking permission. When the registry showed the forged deed, when the escrow officer testified, when the recordings played and Belle's voice described a signature like it was a garnish, the room shifted its gaze. No one recognized the word elder abuse until it stood up in a gray cardigan and asked for a chair. The judge granted my protective order and voided the fraudulent transfer. He issued a referral to the district attorney for forgery and exploitation. He ordered them out of the house within 21 days. He awarded damages I never expected to see. Belle fainted with the delicacy of a person who sees herself as the main character in her own ambulance ride. Grayson looked at me for the first time that day, truly looked, and his face was a boy S for a heartbeat. Then it was a stranger's again. What happened next is not revenge, it's stewardship. I did not keep the house. I gave it to a foundation whose name carries a promise instead of a threat, Mason of Quiet Courage. We hung the sign where the hydrangeas used to glow. My room is small and honest. There's a workshop for sewing, a kitchen that smells like cinnamon and resolve, and a desk where I teach women to make records that outlive gossip. Every Tuesday we sit at a long table and learn how to document everything, because forgetting is the oil that keeps abuse running, and remembering is the grit that stops it. The twist, though, the one I promised you, isn't about a courtroom. It's about a letter I didn't open the day I found it. I discovered it after moving into the Mason, when the last box of papers refused to slide under the bed as easily as the others. Thomas's envelope again, same neat hand, a faint smell of cedar from the box he'd rested in for years. I carried it to the porch and opened it with a butter knife like a woman who knows good things are often simple. Delilah, it began, if you're reading this, I'm late again and you're punctual as always. You'll think this is about money, but it's really about dignity. I have hidden one more paper behind our wedding photograph, the one with the crooked minister and my 2 shiny shoes. If you ever need it, use it. If you never do, forgive my caution. Behind the photograph's brittle backing was an addendum both stranger and kinder than the others. It placed a condition on any future transfer of our property, a clause no one but a teacher would have thought to write. Any heir must complete 1 full year of anonymous community care. Elders, hospice, shelter kitchens, it did not matter. Documented only by third parties, no cameras, no blog posts, no applause. If they failed, their portion reverted to a trust for women who are quiet until they do not need to be. It wasn't designed to punish. It was built to change hands by changing hearts. Ava read it twice. It's unusual, she said, smiling, but it's lawful. Thomas wrote like a man who'd graded too many essays that were all introduction and no conclusion. We can include it in the new trust, I said. We will, she answered, and will publish the framework so others can borrow it. News travels differently in small towns. It moves through hair salons and feed stores, rides the coat sleeves of ministers and librarians, takes the long way past a diner where the pies are trustworthy. In a month, 3 women came in with deeds and stories. One had a son who told her affection was a waste on people past 70. One had a daughter-in-law who found God on the internet and then misplaced him in the laundry room where she kept the bleach. One had a nephew who insisted he was her legacy manager, a phrase that only sounds kind if you've never had your door key stop turning. We helped them write what Thomas taught me, dignity that enforces itself. You will ask about Grayson, because people with good sense often hope for ordinary outcomes. A reporter asked me too, a soft-voiced girl who carried her recorder like a fragile bird. Do you want him back in your life? She said, and I watched the porch light tilt toward evening. I want him to choose, I answered, to be a man tethered to decency instead of applause. A week later, a letter came without a return address. The handwriting was still my son's. Mom, I don't know how to be the person I was with Belle. I don't know if I ever was. I can't apologize yet because the words look like disguises in my mouth. I started volunteering at St. Jerome's on Tuesdays. The nurse there is kind without witnesses. They have me bathing men older than you, and I wish that sentence didn't need to exist for me to understand things. I don't want your money. I want my hands back. I did not reply. Not because I am cruel, but because life gives us few chances to grow without an audience, and I refuse to steal that from him. The Mason has a rule posted above the pantry. Help quietly, document carefully, speak when you must. It applies to my son too. Belle tried a different approach. She sent an email thick with words like misunderstood and context, with photographs lit like apologies. She said the forged deed was meant to streamline and protect assets. She mentioned grief as if it were a cloak that hid her hands while they worked at the latch. She ended with a line that read like she'd found it on a mug. Family is complicated. I forwarded the note to Ava and went back to the kitchen, where June, the former librarian who now catalogs testimonies for us, was rolling pie dough thinner than a lie and steadier than a threat. We bake on Thursdays. Sugar teaches patience if you do it right. There's one last thing you should know. It concerns the porch light. I replaced it last week with a soft, reliable glow, the kind that doesn't blink or hum. At dusk, I stand beneath it sometimes and listen to winter prepare its quiet work in the trees. Last night, footsteps sounded on the walk, familiar and careful. Grayson stopped at the gate. He didn't open it. He set a small box on the brick and stepped back. I waited until he was gone. On the porch, I opened the lid. Inside was the thimble Thomas gave me instead of a ring and a folded slip of paper. For Leia, it read, the girl who learned to stitch straight when her hands shook. He knew her name. He'd seen the workshop list in the community paper. He'd chosen a gift that moved past spectacle into usefulness. I carried the thimble to the sewing room and placed it where Leia would find it. She's 14. Her mother works nights. She sews like somebody speaking a language she was supposed to forget. When she slipped the thimble on, she stood a little taller as if dignity fit too. The porch light glowed. The house breathed. The women told their stories and then started restarting them, because the first telling is for survival and the second is for meaning. If you are 50 or 70 or 90 and someone has tried to write you in small letters, I am here to say, buy a camera if you must, keep a journal if you can, and make a plan that doesn't require anybody's permission to be righteous. Write into your papers the kind of mercy that looks like a task list. Do it now, while your hand is steady enough to sign and your memory is clear enough to testify. They changed the locks, I changed the will, that part you already know. Here's the part they didn't see coming, we changed the rules. Thank you for watching and listening with me. I'll see you in the next video.